Dean Hera, welcome to Democracy Now! What do you think your husband would have thought, Congressmember Studs, if he were alive today, about this day?
I think that he would be surprised that we have made such progress and that this issue is at the Supreme Court 17 years after it was signed into law.
Talk about the significance of what we're about to witness today, the Supreme Court weighing DOMA. By the way, President Clinton did sign it into law and says that he seriously regrets it today. He, in fact, says he had serious concern about signing it at the time he did.
Having been there in 1996 during the debate, a number of people, Gary, myself, and a handful of members of Congress knew that the Defense of Marriage Act was blatant discrimination back in 1996. Unfortunately, at that point, it was really just abstract. No same-sex couples were able to get married anywhere in the entire country. It wasn't until 2004 when Gary and I were able to get married in Massachusetts 1 week after it became legal that what was abstract became concrete. As you had said earlier, Amy, the Defense of Marriage Act bans any kind of benefit that would come from taxation, Social Security, any other kind of benefit. So at that point, when we got married, it became actual discrimination where I would not be treated the same as any of the other colleagues that Gary had worked with in Washington. Talk
about the Gill versus Office of Personnel Management, OPM case that, Dean, you're involved with today, this lawsuit.
I am one of 16 plaintiffs in the case that was brought back in March of 2009 to challenge the discriminatory effects of the Defense of Marriage Act. The other plaintiffs represent a broad range of people who are hurt. Families where they are unable to get the tax benefits or the health insurance benefits from a spouse. Obviously, it's a pocketbook issue for all families trying to save money. It also, on the other spectrum, just as Edie Windsor, the plaintiff in the case before the Supreme Court today, I have fellow plaintiffs that have been in long-term relationships. A friend, Herbertus, also a plaintiff, was in a relationship for 60 years, cared for his partner when he was dying of Parkinson's, but yet when he passed away, he was denied any of the kind of Social Security safety net that he would have been entitled to had his marriage been recognized by the federal government.
Dean, what about your own case? What is it that you have been denied?
Well, in my case, as you had said, Amy, yes, it is. You said the congressional pension. I look at it more that when I first applied for the benefits, I didn't go, in my mind, as a congressional spouse, but as somebody who had been the surviving spouse of somebody who worked for our country as a federal employee for 25 years. The benefits that I'm seeking are the same as any other surviving spouse of a federal employee, which would include the pension, health insurance, and obviously, as I get older, other kind of Social Security benefits.
Dean Hera, I want to turn to your late husband, Congressmember Gary Studs. In his own words, in 1987, he spoke with the gay cable network during a visit to Cincinnati.
I arrived in the Congress in 1973 at the age of 37 without, to my knowledge, ever having met another gay person. There is a long distance between me in 1973 and my standing here today in 1987. That's a lot for 14 years. And I think we all, I don't mean that just my individual situation, I think we all need to keep that in mind. And may I also say, with respect to AIDS, you didn't ask this question, but in the immensity, or notwithstanding the immensity of the tragedy of this epidemic, insofar as one can even remotely look at a silver lining, and I say this with great hesitation because you can't talk about silver linings in the face of a tragedy of this magnitude. But if there is one, I think it is that the existence of gay men and women is no longer subject to question. Many of us grew up in a world where most people didn't know there was such a thing or chose to ignore it and never saw any reference to ourselves. That is absolutely unthinkable from this point on. I, in all of my life until very recently, never saw a newspaper or heard a television or radio report about gay people that was not totally and thoroughly pejorative and negative. Now, every day, every morning, every afternoon, every evening, every citizen of this nation reads and hears about the existence of gay people. It is now an incontrovertible fact, and we can never go back from that. And that is an extraordinary step in itself.
So that is more than 25 years ago. That was Congressmember Gary Studs in 1987. Your thoughts, Dean Hara, as you listen to your longtime partner, and your analysis of what this DOMA case means today in the Supreme Court and what you can expect based on what you heard yesterday in the Supreme Court and the challenge to Prop 8 in California.
I think obviously what Gary was talking about was the progress that was made at this point, but I think that is even more evident today when we look at the national polls, how the percentage is over 50% now of people that say they know a gay or lesbian person, either as a family member, coworker, neighbor, and the number of people that support a same-sex marriage. It's a great tide that has changed in even the last 10 years. And I think, as Gary used to always say, the more people that stand up and self-identify, because if you remember, really being gay or lesbian, you have to self-identify. There's no way to pick somebody out on the street. It makes all of our straight friends and allies also our supporters, because they see how the Defense of Marriage Act hurts people that they know. It's not an abstract issue for them either.
How did Gary Studs come out in Congress? I mean, we're talking about, this is before Barney Frank, a fellow Congress member from Massachusetts, came out.
Right. Gary was the first openly gay member of Congress. He came out in the midst of a controversy in 1983. I think the most important thing of his coming out, though, is that when in the midst of this controversy of, rather than saying that his actions were based on alcohol or any of the other excuses that a number of people, of other members of Congress have used over the years, he proudly stood up in the floor of the House and said that he was a gay man, something that had never been done before. I think that as he demonstrated in that act, it gave a lot of other people the confidence and the courage to also stand up. And I think that act has brought us where we are today. Less than 50 years after Stonewall, 30 years after Gary spoke out on the floor of the House, it's a different world that we live in.